I'm Miranda Rake.
And I'm Sarah Wheeler, and this is The Mother of It All, where we take on motherhood through the lens of culture and culture through the lens of motherhood.
Hi, Sarah.
How you doing?
I'm okay. I am sick, but as we texted about, I'll just share it here for everyone. I had a really positive experience in urgent care this morning.
I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, I felt, we went to a holiday thing last night, and it was like the only thing I've done in like 10 days because I've been sick. And
It's probably for the best. None of these
yeah,
things are really fun anymore, with great love to the people who host them, myself included.
this I was really wanting to go to because it was like close friends in the neighborhood, and it was a cookie swap. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not missing a chance to get like 40 cookies,
Right.
So anyway,
I
we
think you
went.
want like 20 cookies. It's the 21st cookie that really does you in, but go on.
It's a lot of cookies. But so we went and we kind of stayed late, and then we got home and I was like, whatever, I'm gonna let the kids sleep in tomorrow. So everyone slept in today, and then I like at 8:08 I realized I was late for an 8 o'clock meeting because I'm just like treading water,
Yeah.
and I think the illness is just I'm just behind in a lot of ways. And like the kids are almost on break and I'm sick. And yesterday, Griffin had a great day at school. He was super happy. And we were chatting about his day. And he's like, oh, by the way, Mom, you didn't pack me a fresh lunch. Like my lunch was my old lunch from the day before. It was like 2 bites left of a granola bar and
Sounds
a
good to
half
me.
finished pouch. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he was
Well,
like fine with it.
yes.
But I was like,
I think this is a lesson that you'll survive that. Everyone will survive that.
Does
Yeah,
everyone do
yeah.
that? Is that something every parent has done where you just leave the lunch in the backpack and that's what's there for the next day?
Yes, 100%. I've done
Okay.
that. And I'm
Okay.
just like, if you don't, you could eat school lunch and this wouldn't be a problem, or make your own lunch.
It's
Yeah,
true.
and I do have to say too, we are recording this in the past, as always, but
Yeah.
but this time we're recording it in 2025, and people are listening to it right now in 2026. And I don't know if that means that like we and our listeners will be going through some kind of like hole in the space-time continuum. And what that hole will be like, if it'll be fun, if there's good restaurants there. But this is like a weird time warp because it's such a like specific moment to be pre-holiday where we are right now. So is there anything you want to say to your January 2026 self from your December 2025 self?
You made it.
You made
did
it.
You survived.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kids are probably almost back in school. Are they back in school?
Yeah, I don't know.
That'll be
There's
great.
no way of knowing. It's always
Nobody
whenever
knows.
they get back is the day after you think they get back. Is that Monday? They get you with that Monday.
Are yours home on Monday?
Oh yeah, it's always 2 weeks, and then the Monday back, like January 5th or whatever, is a PD day, which like bless, we'll be talking today about, how much we love our teachers. Yes, PD is important, but Lord.
Ours is not. Ours is not. But they do that 4-day weekend after spring break. That's our like gotcha.
That's your curse.
Yeah.
No, the Monday is like they'll always be like 5 parents up in the chat on that like Sunday night being
God.
like, wait, we don't have school tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like, yeah.
Oh, it's like
that's the day where you just
thinking.
like throw them dry food in front of the screen. Speaking of children and whether or not we are destroying their brains systematically, we are so excited to have our guest here to answer that question and more. I've been wanting to have Jack Schneider on the podcast for quite some time and looking for an inroad. So thank you, Culture, for bringing us some interesting content to bring Jack's way. Jack is an education historian and professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's the author of 3 books, most recently The Education Wars with Jennifer Berkshire, and the co-host, also with Jennifer Berkshire, of the Have You Heard podcast, which is a fabulous fabulous place to find engaging, up to date, very, entertaining coverage on education. Jack also founded the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessment, which seeks to expand how we measure school and classroom performance, and which I'm sure we will touch on today. Thank you for coming, Jack.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So Jack, we always start the podcast off asking who's caring for our guests' kids. I do have to add that our last guest was Courtney Martin. We talked about elder care with her. And in the spirit of Courtney, I'm gonna try to, impromptu expand this question to who's caring for your loved ones, any dependents that you have at the moment.
Right now, it's indoor track coach Dave Dickerson, who is
Woo!
making my sophomore daughter run around in circles right now. So that's,
Coach Dave.
yep, Coach D, as
Wow.
he's known.
Coach D. Okay. Is he like um tough love? What's like the vibe?
No, just love, love. He's just
Oh.
a supportive. I don't know if your listeners ever think about the coaching that their children get, but the influence on me as a student that I experienced from my coaches was as powerful as that of my teachers. And I also became a coach. And I will tell you that it is horrifying that our children will spend most of the day being challenged and supported and encouraged to work well with each other, and oftentimes will then get the exact opposite message out on the playing fields, but not from Coach D. Coach D
Yeah.
is like a great educator. It's just he wears a whistle around his neck and forces you to run the 1,000 and the mile in my daughter's case, instead of, like factoring equations and doing whatever else she's doing in 10th grade.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, my daughter had a cheer coach who I think changed her trajectory on. I mean, she's 7. It wasn't her trajectory was just it
Got her
continued
off the
to
streets finally.
grow inches. Yeah, finally. Yeah, right. All the other treatment options had failed. But she, that little girl kind of moment. I don't know if your daughter went through this where I feel like depending on their personality, sometimes they're kind of staring down two options. It's either they kind of go with some of the cultural visions they're seeing of the world is kind of a scary place for me and I have to retreat and be timid and pleasing versus I have to claim my little girl power. And she went the second way with
Uh-huh.
Coach A.
All right. Great. We got a few more letters in the alphabet we need to cover, but then we'll have
I
our
know.
superhero series ready to go.
Okay, so Jack, Miranda and I have been in a bit of a text tizzy over the last couple months, kind of trying to tease apart a couple think pieces in major media outlets about generally kind of the failures of public school. And just for background, for anybody who's listening for the first time, I'm an educator. Miranda and I both have children in public schools, although sometimes they
And
feel like they have
parents.
all the
Yeah.
power. Yeah. Yeah. My parents also went to public school.
Yeah.
And we talk often about the challenges of that and, the limitations of school and public school. But, also have a lot of pride around that. So there was this one piece in New York Magazine entitled "The Big Fail: Student Achievement Has Fallen Off a Cliff, and Neither Trump nor the Pandemic is to Blame." So in this piece, Andrew Rice wrote about kind of basically how much dumber we all are and how much dumber kids are these days. This was also kind of accompanied by this fun little thing you could do, which was see if you're smarter than an eighth grader, which were test questions from a variety of cognitive and academic assessments from, the last century, essentially. And Rice wrote, "If you, like me, are a middle-aged parent Check. You may remember that adults complained that education was crumbling when you were a kid, too, and you turned out fine anyway. Speak for yourself, Andrew. But you may be proud of your public school and have the magnetic car decal to prove it. Check. You may think that, whatever the headlines say, your child is progressing well enough toward literacy and numeracy. You may be deluded. And he goes on to cite declines in academic and cognitive skills that he, says many academics believe started before the pandemic, that are not just a pandemic thing. Then we had this piece in the New York Times by Jia Lin Yang, an opinion piece titled "America's Children Are Unwell. Are Schools Part of the Problem?" And in this piece, she's really arguing that part of the rise in childhood mental health challenges and diagnoses of learning and behavior disorders is due to schools being shitty, essentially, and like not teaching to a range of learners, reducing play, recess time, etc. So she says, the experience of school has changed rapidly in recent generations. Starting in the 1980s, a metrics-obsessed regime took over American education and profoundly altered the expectations placed on children, up and down the class ladder. In fact, it has altered the experience of childhood itself. This era of policymaking has largely ebbed, with disappointing results. Math and reading levels are at their lowest in decades. The rules put in place by both political parties were well-meaning, but in trying to make more children successful, they also circumscribed more tightly who could be served at school at all. So that's a lot to unpack. We got time. Let's start with this first claim, Jack, that schools and the students in them are worse off than they were in the past. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's not true. That is so demonstrably not true that it's almost worth just moving on. And I particularly appreciate his duplicitous move to say, like, you might think that this is the sort of claim people make in a kind of clickbaity way, although they weren't baiting you with clicks 40 years ago. It was trying to get you to buy a newspaper. But no, I'm going to assert that that is not true. That is true. That's people, as long as there have been public schools, and in fact, prior to the advent of anything we could call a public education system, people have been claiming that the schools are failing to accomplish a variety of aims that we have heaped at their doorstep. There is simply no merit to any claim that schools are now, here I'm going to bracket and say, like, plus or minus a few years, but that schools are anything other than the best they ever were. And this is true whatever time period you're looking at. Now, this story of perpetual progress is not a story of A to Z, reaching the end of the rainbow in the pot of gold. This is a long slog toward a goal that we will never reach, right? It's like a mathematical limit. We can only approach it. The goal is so ambitious. It's to serve 50 million kids, or however many kids we will have at that future date. It's about 50 million. To serve them in a way that advances their own self-actualization, the kinds of efficiencies that we value as a culture, including preparing them for jobs and doing this whole thing without bankrupting ourselves as a country, building solidarity among young people in a way that translates into effective citizenship in a democratic republic, assuming we will still have one at this time in the future, and a variety of other aims, right? Like, hey, I particularly value the arts and would love to live in a society where people can do that stuff. Or, hey, like, I value racial justice. Wouldn't that be a cool thing to accomplish through the schools? Or maybe students shouldn't be, drinking as much as they do. There are a variety of either big scale or small scale aims that we are always trying to enact through the schools. The list only grows. Almost nothing falls off the list. It just continues to grow in terms of our ambitions. And the expectation that all of us will be included is the chief driving force of the progress that we have made over the past approximately 200 years. There's no creation date for like America's public schools. In fact, there's no such thing as America's public schools. We've got 50 different relatively autonomous state systems of education within which there are 13,000 public school districts, which each have their own kinds of autonomies, and 98,000 public schools. But if we say, hey, it's a history of about 200 years, and there's been a lot of rhetoric about equally serving everybody because this is something we pay for with our tax dollars, so therefore it ought to serve everybody.
Right.
We can then say that's a promise. That's a promise that got made and that gets made every year, every day, and that communities have fought to be included in that system. Communities that were once formally or informally excluded have been included. That's a big chunk of the story of progress, is communities fighting to be included and fighting to be equally treated inside the schools.
Right.
And then the other part is about growing professionalization and learning as a culture what it means to try to accomplish those aims in a systemic way. So let me give you a couple quick examples, and we can back up to this ludicrous claim. So a couple quick examples would be, once upon a time, Sarah and Miranda and Jack want to be teachers. So what do? They either really go to school for X number of years, hopefully about 1 year beyond the grade that they want to teach, or they just say they did. They amble into town and ask local officials, do you all need a school teacher? And if the answer is yes, they present their qualifications. Well, let me tell you, I'm a graduate of 8th grade. Check out this nice Bible I have. I'll do a little reading from it for you. Or perhaps you'd like me to get my McGuffey reader out and show you my.
I got my rulers so I can slap kids on the hand.
Oh yeah. Oh, you want to see? Well, there's this great one, and careful, we can go down a number of cul-de-sacs here. There's this fabulous line. Oh God. Can I remember it exactly? It was an excerpt from an interview that was conducted in the 19th century of a prospective teacher. And the school committee member, well, we say school committees in Massachusetts, school board member who is interviewing the teacher says, I just have one question. Can you make our big boys behave? And the teacher says, oh yeah, I have been known to take a stick to the big kids who won't comply. And the school committee member says, I've heard everything I need to know. You have my full support. Not a great set of qualifications that Jack and Sarah and Miranda have for teaching. And over time, this is one of the kinds of things that we've built out a system for. Is teacher education perfect? No. Is it easy? No. Is it expensive? A little bit. Does it limit our pool of applicants? Yeah. Does it do a heck of a lot more than, like requiring that you make some promises about being able to keep the big kids in line with corporal punishment? Yeah, I'd say that's progress, right? And we can come up with examples like that when we look at things like the curriculum. Like, gosh, it's a kind of stale curriculum with a bunch of books that are, really more reflective of what 40-year-olds used to read. But it's a heck of a lot better than it used to be, right? It's not zoology and mechanical drawing and, Bible verses. And so we could talk more about how and why schools have gotten better. They have. It's demonstrably true. They serve more kids than they have ever served in their history. That's true basically every day that sentence comes out of your mouth. And are there some fluctuations from like 1 year to the next or, within decades? That's a little bit more contested. COVID did have an impact. There's lots of evidence of that. But prior to COVID, we saw NAEP scores. And what is a standardized test measure? Gosh, not everything, certainly, but something. And NAEP scores were kind of steadily on the rise for decades. And there's lots of other evidence that we can point to that students are learning more decade by decade than any previous decade. And let's just finish dunking on this ludicrous article by saying there literally is the same dumb article every year or every 5 years that says, Johnny Can't Read. Everybody go to your library and get a copy of Johnny Can't Read and then take a look and see what year it was published, right? This stuff happens, and it's because we have these anxieties about our society. Like, well, are we going off the rails? Are we coming apart at the seams? Are we going to compete with our international competitors? How's our economy doing? And where do we turn when we have these anxieties? We turn to the schools, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
they're making the future of our society.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I don't think just like a tiny aside, but also they're usually staffed by women, so they're easier to dunk on. But
Totally. And yeah, and let's
I'm
not
sure
move
you
on
can.
too quickly from that point, right?
Okay.
That one of the reasons schools get trashed, as you said, is that the professional expertise of educators is easily dismissed for that reason, right? Because we tend to dismiss teaching as a professional occupation, largely because it is associated with quote unquote women's work. There's some good sociological literature on the ways that gender rubs off on jobs, and the gender of jobs rubs off on people. And we have a
Right.
feminized
Right.
profession that contributes to people undervaluing it. And also because we pay for education with our tax dollars, educators are paid less than people with comparable levels of training and education.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
also leads to us thinking that teaching isn't as hard or as professional as it is. And then third, everybody goes to school, right? So unlike plumbing or electrical work, where it's like, oh my God, I'm not touching that. I could break my house. Right?
Yeah.
We all think, oh, teaching. I listen, I watched teaching for 12 years. How hard could it be? Right?
Yeah.
Stand in
I,
front of
I
the
think
class,
there's
write
some
some stuff on
parallels
the
with
board.
parenting in a sense of
Yeah.
like, that it's like generally thought of as women's work. It's something we all experience, so it's easy for us to get together and hate on. And like we assume that there's not really like much skill involved because it's something that is so, general.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back. I know there's going to be a lot of acronyms today. I just the National Education of Assessment of Educational Progress is NAEP. Those are national test scores. And yeah, I just want to kind of link up, one that I really appreciate what you're saying about teacher education. I've worked in a teacher education program for over a decade. A decade ago, but especially now, we've never, asked about corporal punishment in an interview. And it's true. What we ask of our teachers, it's incredible. I mean, yes, does a new teacher need a lot of continued support? They do. And every year we're kind of adding more of that as well. Like I'm seeing districts, creating positions where there are coaches for students for the first 5 years. And they're kind of thinking of that more as not a probational period in any kind of threatening way, but as a support period. That's a little bit different because we
Coaches
are
for
trying.
teachers.
Yeah, that we're trying to
For
address this challenge of teachers kind of leaving in the first few years. And I also just really appreciate this kind of thread that I've seen you write about. You have a great piece in The Nation on this that we will link about like warning against nostalgia for the education of the past. And one of the reasons I also find this so interesting is that we see this in other sectors of our culture. And Miranda and I have talked about this. There's a David Brooks piece in the Times that I just like, want to light on fire every winter solstice about how people used to be nice, right? And people have kind of lost their politeness.
Uh-huh.
And, one of the many things that I find very off putting about that is he is talking about a time, and he's literally like citing examples and time periods when the rights of anybody but white men in this country were heavily restricted. And he's saying, like, but we used to say thank you. And like someone would hold the door for you. And it's like, really? That's kindness
Uh-huh.
to you? So I do think like you referenced the Archie comics in your piece about educational nostalgia. Like, we weren't serving kids with special needs on like a, legal basis, like a have to basis till 1975 in this country. Right. And so I do think this thing about both that we continue to ask more and more of schools and to add more, but also that like when we're talking about that one room schoolhouse, who was that for? Not only how effective was it, but who was that actually serving is a really important question whenever we're doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I want to name the second article that you read from and say that even though I'm more sympathetic to that kind of argument that schools are more oriented toward the curriculum that is tested. Let's resist the urge to call it the academic curriculum, because there's plenty that is academic that happens inside arts and music
Mm-hmm.
education, or in the physical
Mm-hmm.
education classroom,
Yep.
or in clubs. But even
With
if we
Mr.
say,
D,
what's that?
Coach D, Coach
Oh yeah,
D.
Coach D, right?
I'm sure
Yeah,
there's math out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it could be. What's 1,000 meters
Yeah. I have no idea.
yeah, exactly. So,
I didn't do
uh,
track.
so if we just look at the tested curriculum, we can see that there is more emphasis placed, and this is in the post NCLB era. So since George W. Bush signed No Child Left Behind into law in 2002, we've seen a disproportional emphasis on what used to be called English, but which is now ELA, English Language
Mm-hmm.
Arts, and math. And particularly in the tested grades 3 through
Yeah.
8, as well as 1 year of high school, usually 10th grade. And there's been a decline in many schools in the number of minutes students get in other subjects, as well as the minutes of recess, lunch, etc. That's
Right.
real.
That piece is
And
true. Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, the kids are all right. It's like, yes, we should have more time for play. We should have more time for arts and for music and for PE and for clubs. But to say that our schools are in crisis and all of our kids are suffering in terms of their mental health because of this is not a helpful kind of argument. It's not helpful because it creates the illusion that our schools are in crisis, that our educators are not in control of the situation,
Yeah.
that our leaders are clueless. And by this, I mean our school and district leaders. There are
Right.
some leaders who are clueless. Um, and that is not the case. They, in many ways, continue to exercise professional discretion with regard to ensuring that good stuff is happening
Yeah.
inside school. And
Yeah.
and yeah, anyway.
And I've also seen, my one big beef too with that piece was that as a special educator, there is wide variety. I mean, you make a point in your writing and you kind of said it at the top, but I think it bears repeating that, like, when we talk about quote unquote schools or even public schools, right, we're talking about a really wide range of kind of approaches and practices and structures that happen based on states and districts, and it's hard to generalize. And I think that if we're talking about like everybody making movement from their baseline, we are seeing an unprecedented level of understanding, of teaching towards neurodivergence and disability in public schools. Again, like it's only been 50 years that we couldn't say that we can no longer say, sorry, you're disabled, stay home.
Mhm.
Right. And so since then, the laws have gotten better, the practices have gotten better. I'm just seeing teachers. I train teachers, and 10 years ago, I was training general education teachers just on like how to, attend a meeting, and even talk about a kid with special needs, a disabled kid who's in your classroom, but they don't really belong to you, right? Like they belong to the special education teachers. Now I'm training those teachers on how to support and include those kids in their classrooms. And that is not everywhere, but it is a trend that is definitely having an impact. And there
Yep.
was this thread that I'm kind of like, if you want to lose a couple hours on Reddit, I don't know if that's an addiction you have, Jack, but our friend who writes the Evil Witches newsletter, Claire Zulke, posted this Reddit thread on like education Reddit recently, where a teacher is asking other teachers, yeah, I know we shit on like this generation of kids, but what are the things that you see this generation of students doing better than those before them? And so there were a lot of responses, but so many of the comments were about inclusion, about advocating for themselves and like vulnerable peers, about David Brooks, listen, kindness. Um,
Yeah.
and
It
so
was such
I,
a
I want more
heartwarming
recess
read.
too, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was a good read. It was like I feel like, Sarah, you sent me that, and it was like a lovely thing to read before I fell asleep because it was so like uplifting. Like it was so sweet to hear what they were noticing, and also like reminded me of what is so beautiful about teachers. Like they're seeing this, they
Yeah.
are recognizing it and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
they're reflecting on it. And I think it's kind of feels like it's worth saying, like, I read these articles, right? And I texted Sarah that New York Times one when it first came out, and I was like going through some stuff at our school. And both Sarah and I feel like, are so involved at our public schools. Like we are peering behind the curtain. And I mean, Sarah, you've already been behind the curtain, but it's like it's kind of a dangerous thing, right? Because you get really close to like all the cracks, and you see how fragile the ecosystem is, and you can get I can get really caught up in what's lacking and what could be better, and
Mm.
but like if I remember to ask my kid, like, how's school, or like, how do you feel about your school, like, he likes it, he's happy. And even when I think there's flaws or I see issues, it doesn't take much for my confidence to be built back up. Like, just even last night he came home and his backpack had this really cool art project in it. And some parents had come in and just done art with them. And like his teacher made space for that, and they had supply, just doesn't take a lot to make him
Mm-hmm.
pretty happy. And I feel like watching for all those little ways that they're happy is so beautiful. And the idea that the teachers are also like that thread, the
Yeah.
Reddit
In this
thread,
thread,
are also seeing that, like
there's like
their
a thread
happiness.
in that Reddit thread, like a sub thread about one of the things they said was that like there's just way more talk about menstruation than there used to be.
Yes.
And like one teacher just listed some quotes like of like she's like, even this week I have heard like, a girl like yelling down hallway, "Yo, Mr. B, like we're out of tampons in the bathroom. Get on it." Like it was just it's really yeah, I mean, and just Jack, I keep thinking about what you just said about like we're only adding things, right? Like the things that we're expected to kind of cover about life in school are so vast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, Miranda, I think what you're pushing on there is the fact that we need to hold two truths in our minds at the same time. And, that's a little bit cognitively demanding, but we can do it. And one of those truths is what we do for young people in this country is unprecedented in the history of the world. Like, period. Period. It's unprecedented to say we're going to educate everybody, even kids who don't have the paperwork that their enemies would like them to have. They get an education. You got a disability, you get an education too. And it's going to be appropriate for you and still free, right? It's unprecedented in the history of the world. People have fought like hell for it. It wasn't given, right? It was demanded and won over time. We accept it as a society and we pay for it with our tax dollars. And we spend the better part of $1 trillion every year in a country that is miserly with regard to supporting people and even the young people that we claim to love in this country. Miserly. And we have this educational system that is, now we're moving over to the other hand, this other truth that is imperfect, that is underfunded, that is still unequal, that still suffers from segregation, that is still too focused on what you needed to know in the 19th century in order to go to college, that is still racially unequal in terms of what gets covered in the curriculum. That is, we could go on and on and on, right? Both of these things are true at the same time. And so we all need to, on the one hand, protect and preserve what we have won, this basic framework for serving all kids, and fight to change within that
Yep.
framework, all of the things that fail to live up to this really grand promise of serving every kid equally and of doing all those things we were talking about, 20 minutes ago, right? Of building solidarity, of building national strength, of helping young people self-actualize. All of that probably can't happen to the extent that we want it to happen simultaneously, but it's the grandness of the ambition that keeps us scratching and clawing
Mm.
every single year for improvements, and we mostly don't get them.
Yeah.
And we do get a lot, and that is how you win sustainable change over time, right? It's really easy actually to convince people to burn something down and then try to remake something and lose all of the good stuff that was there in the process, right?
Mhm.
And it's also really easy to say like, "Ooh, change is hard. No
Mm.
thanks." The hard thing is to say, "Hey, we want to like keep a
What
lot
are
of
we gonna
this
do? Yep.
and we want to make change." And it only gets more complicated when we say like, "And we all get a say in this because we're all going
Right.
to get served by this."
Well, let me
Mhm.
ask you, Jack. Okay? So if schools failing is inaccurate, and also I think it's important to repeat, kind of dangerous. I'm looking at the statistic about that public school parents are actually mostly satisfied with their schools, but the general public opinion of public schools is a lot lower.
Mhm.
And I wonder if that speaks to kind of the factors that we talked about, where we kind of disrespect schools in lots of ways, both kind of because of who's in them and who's running them, and also because of media coverage. So if that is untrue, dangerous, what are the narratives that you think parents should be caring about? You just wrote this, beautiful book, where you talk about this and kind of like what's happening in now 2026 that we should be kind of worried about related to schools, and that might lead to kind of some of the advocacy that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that parents and all of us as citizens should be paying attention to is the outright assault on public education. That is probably the biggest threat that our schools have faced in a century, maybe ever,
Mm,
because prior efforts to transform the curriculum or to throw particular kinds of teachers, right? E.g., communists, as we've
right.
branded them, out of the classroom, or homosexuals out of the classroom, right? There have been movements like that. That's the
Mm,
rhetoric. Dangerous, awful, life ruining, disruptive. That's happened, right? Efforts to purge the curriculum of things people didn't like, right? Most
yeah.
listeners probably have heard of the Scopes monkey trial and
Mm,
the conflict over the teaching of evolution, right? That stuff has happened ever since there have been taxpayer-funded schools, but those battles have usually happened within the context of people believing that public education should exist, right? They're fighting over what it
mm,
should look like. Sometimes
yeah.
those fights get nasty
Mm,
in terms of who belongs, for instance, right? So the fight over racial inclusion, which by the way is not over, never over, that's a nasty, no good fight. But even that presumed the continued existence of a public education system.
yeah.
Whereas what we're living through right now is an effort to dismantle the public schools and to replace the public education system with a privatized system that would do a number of things, including drastically reduce what we spend on education in this country. And we can see this in efforts that have unfolded in places like Arizona, where parents have been encouraged to pull their kids out of their local public school and request what is called the education debit card. And you get the state appropriation, which, by the way, is less than would have been spent on your kid in a traditional public school. You get
Ugh,
that amount loaded onto a debit card, which is untraceable. So you can spend it on anything you want. That's by design, because the goal is to get those dollars out of the public education system to make it less
What?
stable,
Like
to
you could
lead
go
to
to
its collapse.
Target?
There's no way they can't trace it, right? So you're encouraged to, or technically required to spend it on your child's education. You could spend it on ABC Mouse. You could buy an iPad and say your kid is just going to learn on a tablet all day.
Right.
But they
Right.
have no way of telling what you purchased with it, and that's by design. So you could
Yeah.
just use it to go on a shopping spree if you wanted for yourself, and buy a bunch of new audio recording equipment to take the
Hey,
pod to the
mine
next
sounds
level.
amazing. Yeah.
And 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 there are programs like that
Yeah.
that are unfolding at the state level all across the U.S. And they're not just about reducing spending; they're about undermining teachers' unions, because education is the most unionized sector in this
Mm,
country. And I think most disturbingly, they're about pulling us apart as a nation and allowing us to fragment, right? To become little tiles rather than a mosaic, because there is an ideological position among many of the architects of this effort that we are not a society. We are a collection of individuals, and each individual should be a complete free agent. And that's not what you are in the public education system, right? One of the things that our public schools do is teach you, well, actually, you live in society. Well,
mhm.
actually, you don't get to do the thing you want to do all the time.
Mhm.
And maybe we overcorrect on that side. Maybe there should be a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
more room for, like, hey, I'm a kid who needs to move around a lot. But one of the things that you do come out of the public schools in most cases knowing and believing is, well, I'm a part of something bigger than me, and I need to make compromises around a lot of things. And also I can get along with all kinds of people. Um, so this is one theme that people should be paying attention to, tuning in on. You mentioned, Sarah, the Education Wars, my most recent book with Jennifer Berkshire. We wrote a book prior to that called The Wolf of the Schoolhouse Door. Hopefully both of those books are in everybody's libraries. Go to your
Mm,
library and get a free
they're both in mine.
Okay, get a free copy,
Yeah.
photocopy or take pictures with your phone of the chapter that you like best, and then send it to your friends and make sure everybody's informed, or listen to our podcast. We're usually talking about stuff like this. We do a podcast called Have You Heard? No question mark. Who knows why? And people need to get informed about that. So that's one theme. Can I squeeze in another theme?
Yeah, yeah. I just want to like highlight too the thing that kind of blew me away and like it's kind of making me tear up a little bit, that this distinction between movements that are arguing about, what we should do in the public schools versus that whether or not they should exist. And that's really horrifying. Okay, go on. I'll try to
Let,
compose
let,
myself.
let,
But I'm sure what you're about to say is not going to make me feel better.
Well, let's linger for a minute on how horrifying it is, right? Imagine trying to convince Americans to do something as ambitious as educate 50 million kids regardless of background, and to spend approximately $14,000 every year for a minimum of 12 years, but in most cases 13 years, on every single one of them.
It would
And
never happen.
right, it would never
I
happen.
was outside my public library the other day, and with my husband, and I was like, God, I just fucking love the library. Like, we go once every 2 weeks, and my kids are, self-identified bookworms, and
Yep.
like we get 30 books, and I get like 5 and read one of them, and they, it's amazing, and the librarians are incredible, and I just especially like now with just all the kind of nastiness. I just was like, I love the libraries. And my husband turned to me and said, if we didn't have them, they wouldn't let us make them.
Oh yeah.
They would never let us build this
I'm
now.
very
And
anti little free libraries. My wife is like, can't understand
mm,
why I'm so opposed to them. And it's
Oh, I
because
love
I think
those.
I think they undermine real libraries. It's like, we
oh,
have
you're blowing
libraries.
my mind, Jack.
They are full of books.
And they
Go
are
there
free.
and
Wow.
run into your neighbors there. I'm not
Mm.
going to start this fight. I can tell
Oh,
Miranda
no,
takes me.
I'm super we'll take that on another time, and I think that's fascinating
All right,
and very compelling.
let's go
Okay,
to
you had a
theme two.
yep, mhm.
Theme two is there needs to be, this is something that all parents and all citizens should be fighting for. There needs to be a national listening session where we listen to what young people want school to be like. And
Mm.
this is, if there is a crisis, we should flip it and make it an opportunity. And one of the themes of my work, so you referenced a few books. You named 3 books. There are actually 6 books. I think 3 of them, though, are worth reading. So we've
Oh.
named 2.
Oh my god. We
Um,
gotta alright, I'll find the website
I'll,
that
I'll,
that
I'll name
someone needs to update
the third one
for
worth
you.
reading is Beyond Test Scores.
Yeah.
And we just try to name, I wrote the book. I don't know who the we is, me and my germs, tried to write a book that would help put on people's maps all the things that schools should do. And
Yeah.
instead of that just being Jack Schneider pontificating, well, I do plenty of pontificating. So it's not just that. Um, but in addition to that, not instead of that, the goals, the aims that get articulated come from focus group and interviews and polling of students, teachers, families, community members, principals, district superintendents. With communities, we ran focus groups in, I think, 8 different languages. Let's see if I can remember: English,
What an
Spanish,
idea.
Portuguese, Mandarin, Haitian Creole, Korean, what am I forgetting? Oh, and Arabic. Oh, that's only 7 though.
Cambodian, were you?
My
I'm
God.
thinking about Massachusetts. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, by and large, people agree about
Yeah.
stuff. And holy cow, do kids and young people who aren't kids anymore, do they enjoy being taken seriously? And can they dream about what school would look like? And it turns out they do want to go to school. They want to be with other young people. They want to grow. They want to learn stuff. And they
Yeah,
don't
they
just want to go and like hang
have
out
an
in free
AI
periods all day.
right, to skateboard or have, like, an AI teacher
Yeah,
that lets
like,
them, pitch their small business all day. Yeah.
yeah, right? It's like,
No.
no, they have a lot to say on this issue. And I think if we took that seriously, if we took their experiences seriously and let them lead a bit, they would actually lead us in a direction that we all agree with, because what they say they want out of school is
Yeah.
pretty much in line with what the rest of us say. And here's the difference, is that it's real for them in a way that it isn't real for the rest of us most of the time, because the rest of us, especially grown-ups, especially those of us, well, I wouldn't say especially, for many of us who have kids, what we think school is for is to help our kids get ahead, right? That's the purpose of school. That's the aim that has eaten everything else, right?
Mhm.
School is a mechanism for producing social mobility. And there are reasons for
Mhm,
that,
mhm.
including we have a society that doesn't allow for a tremendous amount of social mobility, and in which
Right.
wealth is dramatically unequal, getting more unequal by the day. Um, and school can, in many ways, help people move up the social and economic ladders. But that is such an unthinking, narrow-minded, and unproductive way of understanding the mission of education. And if you ask people, just think about it for a second, just like one beat, just give me a beat before you answer where the good schools are, right? So if you ask them in Massachusetts, where are the best public schools? They will not take that beat. They'll say Wellesley,
Yep.
Weston, Wayland. They'll give you a bunch of W's, right?
Sudbury. But you could put
Oh,
Sudbury in there.
Lincoln,
Concord. Don't
Sudbury,
forget
Concord,
Concord.
Carlisle. Well, yeah, those are, it's Lincoln, Sudbury combined, Concord, Carlisle
Oh,
combined.
right.
But yeah, sure. Let's just name all the affluent, predominantly white school
Yep.
districts where most parents have college degrees, if not graduate degrees. That's where the quote unquote good schools are. Then you say, before you answer, just think about it. What do you know? What do you not know? What would you like to know? All of a sudden they're like, I actually have no idea. I don't know. I would have to go look. Well, what would you look for?
Mm,
Well, they start to think about it. What would you look for? I would want kids to be engaged and to be learning
mhm.
things that they think are valuable and to
Yep.
get like a lot of different kinds of experiences and to have opportunities to create things. And I would want them to get like a full curriculum. So, art and music and PE and learning how to do stuff on the internet and with coding. And I also want clubs and sports. And I want them developing as citizens. They should learn how to get along across difference. They're going to name all this stuff eventually, but it's not top of
Salad
mind for
bar.
them. What's that?
Everyone loves the salad bar.
Oh, salad. Oh,
Mm.
yeah, good food,
We
right?
could get
That's
into
one of the
that.
that's one of the first
Yeah.
places kids will go because it's so real for them, right? They don't
Yeah.
they
Yeah, they
don't
want
think
good
like,
food.
"Oh, I don't know what a school." They're like, "I know what a good school does, and my school does some of those things and not
And what do
others."
the kids say?
The kids say a lot of the stuff that it takes adults a lot of prompting to do,
Mm,
right? If anything, you have to prompt the kids like, all right, now like you've been super ambitious. Let's reel this back into the real world a little bit. Um, and what they eventually describe is like, I want school, but I just want it to be more humane.
mm,
I want it to be like a little bit more shaped by people like me. I want a
mm,
little bit more freedom to be who I am and
mm.
a little bit more flexibility around like what a good outcome of this whole process is.
Right.
And so
Right. The
the second theme.
influence on the expectations, not
Totally.
necessarily lowering them, but
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And so the second theme is, we're not going to move from the society we're in into a society that takes young people really seriously and empowers them. And that's not going to happen overnight. But I think everybody who's listening could like have a conversation with a kid about like, what would a great school look like? What would it be? And and to try to then get that kid's back, get that young
Dude.
person's back and say like, you know what? I'm going to go to a school board meeting. Or you know what? I'm going to get some
Yes.
parents together. Or like, hey, I'm going to start writing a letter and try to get other people to join on
Right, and get
because,
and get kids
yeah,
input. I mean, this is crazy. Like, this is we talked on this podcast. Another running beef for us is the Jonathan Haidt book, The Anxious Generation, which I think, like, yes, we should be talking about screens, but there are no student interviews in that book.
yeah.
There are no conversations with actual teenagers about the influence of screens on them.
Yeah.
And it's really it's both kind of, um, feels like, unethical and also inaccurate to keep talking about kids
Yeah.
without
Talking
asking
to
them
kids.
Uh-huh.
and talking to
Yeah.
them. There's
Yeah.
this other piece too, Jack, that is coming up for me, which is something that has nagged at me a lot being in education for a long time, which is that, I mean, you're an educational researcher, there are questions to answer, right? But I feel like for the most part, people kind of know what works in
Yeah.
education, you know, and
Yeah.
and we just don't do it.
Yeah.
And the people that have money and power don't listen to us,
Mm,
or it's not sexy,
mm,
basically, to just kind of get a smaller child to teacher ratio and to,
mm,
by the way, understand that that one factor
yeah.
is never going to produce the kind of effect that would need it to in order to like convince a bunch of investors that it's the one thing, right?
Mhm.
That this is a complex ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I think there was this book I loved. It came out a long time ago called Teachers Have It Easy. It was like Dave Eggers, who started 826, and Nineveh Calgary, and this journalist Daniel Mouthrop. And I read it as a teacher, and it was about, mostly about the ways that different districts or some kind of charter school organizations have done teacher compensation differently based on kind of what actually makes a successful teacher and what we actually want to see our teachers giving time and care to. But there was a ton of just talking to teachers. And it was like, yeah, this is like a 200-page book that has very little kind of hard data in it. And I just believe that if we just decided we were going to kind of do these things at a scale that, could actually have an impact, things would get better. We don't need like some, ed tech evaluation of,
Mhm.
like we know what helps,
Yeah.
and maybe we need more tools for measuring it. Like I love your work around, project based, teacher influenced measurements of classroom quality, right? Like I can see that's something we would want more research on how to do that right.
Mhm.
But in terms of like how to make schools good, just go into any school and ask them.
Yeah, it's like we don't have 3.5 million adults who
Right.
show
Who
up
would
in
we
the
ask? These
in the
women?
system
Like,
every day. Yeah, or like 50 million young people who are in the system who spend. Well, one of the things we do as one of our research projects is we
mm,
survey thousands and thousands and thousands of students and teachers every year, and we propose like, hey, if you want to know how a school is doing, you should build this into your data system. And one of the
uh-huh.
pieces of pushback I will often get is, well, that's not objective
Right.
information. It's like,
Yes, it
uh,
is.
okay, you're telling me that if the vast majority of students tell you that they are not engaged in school, that we don't have a real piece of information here.
Right.
You're
Right.
damn right we have a real piece of information
Seriously.
here.
Yeah,
Uh,
so in California, we do the chicks. We do the California Healthy Kids Survey.
mhm.
Um, and I think that needs to show up in more places. But you can that data is available. Is that not something that most states do?
No, it's
It
not.
asks
In
if they
fact,
survey parents, they survey
yeah,
students.
lots of states are actually pulling back on their surveying right now, in part because surveys will occasionally ask questions about, like, the racial environment at the schools, or ask kids to self-identify their
Oh,
gender, or so
right.
they've been caught up in the culture war. But I
Wow.
do think there's a connection between theme one and theme two, and that is that we're in this terrible culture war right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Schools are on fire as a result of all of the gasoline that keeps getting poured on them about, gender indoctrination or CRT or whatever the latest claim is. And also, right, theme two is like, hey, the kids are mostly okay and they know
Mm,
what they want and they know what they need. And
mhm,
the
mhm,
bridge between theme one and theme two is basically what you were saying, Sarah, is like, we know how to do this. We know how to do this, so let's just do this. Let's stop fighting each other, and let's
mhm,
remember that really what happens inside schools most days is pretty normal stuff and pretty good stuff, and that it could always be better. And I would encourage every listener to just think about, like, what's the moment that the light got turned on for you in school? Because it happened for most people, not for everybody, and that's something that we need to fight for in the future, right? But for many of us, a light got turned on at some point, and that can look a lot of different ways, right? The light got turned on where I saw myself as an intellectual, or where I saw
mm,
myself as somebody who belongs, or where I realized that, like, I'm good at something that I didn't know, or where I realized I was interested in something, right? What's a moment where the light came on, and can't that happen at all schools for all kids? And then can it happen at all if we don't make basic guarantees for everyone? And so I think
yeah.
that
Yeah.
the connection is like, let's start talking more about what goes right and why it goes right and when it goes right, and less about these kind of cooked up narratives about everything that's wrong. Let's also ground what we're talking about in, like, our real experiences. What did you experience? What did your kid experience? Don't tell me what you heard on the news. Don't tell me what some friend of somebody's cousin told you, right? Let's ground it in reality. And
Right. Well, this is that data point about most parents being
that's right.
of public school children being
That's right.
satisfied.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people want to
Okay, so
look
Well,
I'm
that
at
up
a
with some
holiday party
PDK
tonight,
poll.
Jack, and somebody brings up these articles to me and is like, public schools are failing.
Yeah.
Is that my line?
How do you
Like,
know?
what have you seen?
How do
Tell
you
me about
know?
your experience.
Yeah,
How do you know?
tell me about your personal experience there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me what you really know. I'm so interested in you telling me about what you really. Is this true of your school? Is this happening at your school? Are
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
interested in hearing about what's happening at my school? I can tell you the things that I don't love at my school, and I'd also like to tell you about the things that I do love.
Mm.
yeah, I
This is
think
why no one wants to sit next to me at dinner parties, by the way. But
they're like,
yeah.
please. Well, it's interesting to think about.
I love that though.
It's like if someone asked me how I feel about our school, right? It's like it depends on the day. Like we've had a rough year. We've talked about this before. Like we went for months without a principal and then no vice principal, and we host um the way our district does it is like they kind of bus kids with like they call it SES. It's like what is that? Social emotional something. Um Basically it's part of like our sped department, I think. So we have these like higher needs kids, and their primary teacher was out for like much of the year, so it was like a sub. And so we were a mess. Like our school was really a mess, and many parents were like one foot out the door. And our district is currently doing this giant rezoning, so we're getting bumped into probably a totally different high school, which is like a pretty big shakeup for a lot of people.
Hmm.
We're just like in bad shape, and it's I think a lot of families who chose our elementary school by purchasing their house, are like, dang, I messed up. Like I invested my mortgage in public school is kind of how most of these families think about it. And I know this is coming from a place of like
I
privilege.
have feelings about that statement.
I know. But it's like me too. Honestly, I was like, do I put this money into a private school and stay in this cheaper house? Or do I try to put my money into a mortgage and put it in a school that is like good? I know this is a mess. I'm just trying to be honest, right? I'm trying to be like, this is a lot of people,
Mhm.
especially now. I'm like, this is a lot of people, right? And like, I'm not steeped in education. I don't read about it that much. I haven't thought about it that much, right? I'm just like a parent being like, I don't know what to do for my kid, where education takes up like, until he entered kindergarten, it took up like this much space in my brain.
I just have to say, too, you could stay in the cheap house and send your kid to that school. That is a possibility. We're
Yes.
running out of time to
Yes.
get into
No,
that,
that
but
was a
I
possibility,
have to
right?
name it.
Well, they had a years-long rat infestation, and
Yeah.
so other
Yeah.
parents were like, "Don't do it." And I was like, "Okay." You just kind of
How do
get
they know?
their kids were in it for
Okay. All right.
years,
All
and they
right.
were like, the district didn't deal with the rats for years, and so now we're somewhere else. So I was like, "Okay." Anyway, it's just like, and I think Oregon schools perform particularly badly, is what I've heard. I'm one of those parents, right? I'm the test case for what we've been talking about. Like, but I think it's like I do want to be there. I do care. I want to participate. We're not actually leaving. Like so many of us have had one foot out the door the whole time. And then you're just like, but you keep coming back and you keep coming back to your kind of community and the neighborhood and the teachers and the people in the
And you
building
said
who
it. Your kid's okay. You
they're
know?
okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean and
Yeah.
we have some higher needs and stuff, and but I think that it's like kind of what you're talking about, Jack and Sarah, like as people steeped in education, like in this world and in this history, it's like so valuable to hear because there's so much to know and like so many things. It feels like a microcosm of being a parent where it's like there's all this anxiety and you're trying to do the right thing and you don't really know. And all it takes is like one little article like this to kind of move your
Yeah.
needle
Yeah.
that day,
Yeah.
right? It
That's
moves
a
your
yes.
needle that way. And you're like, well, everything is really bad
Sounds
in
pretty
my school,
scary.
or like it kind of tips you and it
Mhm.
tips you back. And you're not, often you're not even in the building unless you have the time to volunteer, which a lot
Right,
of
right.
parents
So if
don't.
the answer to how do you know is only, this piece that I read in the New York Times, that's a problem.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
some kids don't talk about their day, right? Like a lot of kids don't really tell their parents much. Um,
Yes, you learn to recalibrate your indicators on whether your kid's
right.
doing okay as they get
Yeah.
older. I mean, you have a teenager, Jack. That must be well, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like with teenagers you get more information and with others it's like you just gotta be like, well, they're going
Yeah.
to school.
I wonder, like,
Yeah.
what is
We
the kind of, in 2 minute, like a 1 minute kind of, if you're freaking out about your school, do you think just ask your kid how their day was? Or like, what is your zoom out, like your quick and
mm,
dirty zoom out when you're freaking out, you
on
know?
like the micro
Like,
level.
instead of
Yeah.
Googling, like, alternative schools in my area, like, what is
Mhm.
the, what
Private
is
debit card available, my zip code.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, there is such a thing as a struggling school. That
Mhm.
happens. There are teachers who, probably should find other work. That's real.
Yeah.
I don't think it's common, but it's real.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you're really worried, like I'm really worried that my kid is not getting a good education. I'm really worried that my kid is unsafe. I'm really
Mhm.
worried that my kid's teacher is a toxic influence. I would say, like, go get more information, not on the internet, not from strangers, and maybe not even from, other parents. Like, say, can I come visit the school? Can
Mm.
I be a guest? Can I visit? I just want to learn more about what's happening here. It's a public school. So it should be a part of their mission to bring you in and let you see. I want to look at student work. I want to see the kinds of assignments students are getting. You may not always be welcomed with open arms. Special education, as Sarah was mentioning it earlier, right, is an area where we see, like, parents have rights. There is lots of stuff parents can get access to, and also they sometimes or often have to fight like hell for it.
Yes.
But they
Yes.
eventually will win. And so, there may be some low level conflict here, but, like, that's the way to find out. And
Yep.
also by talking to your kid and asking questions not that are abstract, like, do you think you go to a good school? But, like, do you feel safe at school? Do you have friends?
Mhm.
Mm.
Are there adults who care about you at school? Do you feel that you're treated with respect by adults at your school? That book that I
I'm having
mentioned.
this
Mhm.
thought of, like,
Right.
Mhm.
giving your kid the Healthy Kids survey. I'll
Yeah, well,
link
I
to
was
it.
gonna
You
say
just see the
the
questions.
the book that I
Mhm.
mentioned, as maybe the third one that would be worth reading,
Yeah.
that hopefully is in your library. It's called Beyond
Beyond
Test
test scores.
Scores,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it has, like, a series of questions that you
Oh.
can ask. So go photocopy those questions, and then it's like, here are the questions that you should ask if you're trying to figure out, like,
Mm.
if this is a school that is succeeding. So
Mhm.
That was my dissertation work too, basically. Like, how do you just ask kids how they're doing at school on a low level way?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that hard. That's great. You've got a list because I didn't publish my dissertation, so you're you have the skills and the follow through.
Well, we
I
will
like that
link,
about you.
I've
Yeah,
linked to that in the post, and it looks like Bookshop has it on back order, so I think you definitely do
let's
go
get
to
it
your
on front
library.
order.
Or
Let's
yeah, or there you
collectively
go. Yeah,
bring
we'll
it
bring it back.
bring it to the front.
Well,
Jack,
yes.
we are so grateful for all of your insights today and your emphatic, passionate, not just feelings, but facts about education. Are there any, before we let you go, any culture recommendations that are burning for you, for our listeners?
burning, maybe not burning. I had shoulder surgery a
Simmering.
few months ago, and I do
Would you recommend that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
If you have a torn labrum, go get
Yeah,
that sucker stitched back in.
Okay.
I do a lot of physical therapy. Like, I'm talking like 90 minutes a day of physical
Oh my
therapy.
God, the patience.
And I was complaining about how boring it is. And my wife was like, why don't you just listen to audiobooks? And I was like, oh, yeah. And then I was complaining to my daughter, thinking she might be more sympathetic. And she's like, why don't you just get an audiobook? So I listened to their advice, and I listened to a lot of books. One of them is Louise Erdrich's latest book. Came out, I think, 2 years ago.
The Sentence?
The Mighty
Oh.
Red.
Oh, I just last night finished The Night Watchman. That's so funny. I'd never read.
So
But
good.
I haven't read her newest one.
So good. And
Okay.
then a book that had been on my list for like 10 years that I had been meaning to get to, called The City and the City, which is like a weird science detective novel.
Is it
remi-
Ben Winters? No. Who is
No,
that?
it's China Melville.
Oh, yeah.
And it reminded me a little bit of 1Q84 in terms of like weird,
The Murakami book?
weird
Yeah.
detective
Oh,
stories.
cool.
Yeah, it was really good. So those would be my
Sweet.
Recommendations. Those
Thank you.
books and shoulder labrum surgery.
Yes, the combination is really the
Yeah.
kicker.
You may not
Yes,
enjoy the
good.
books as much if you skip the first part, which is
If you're not like
The
just
surgery.
moving your arm against a
there's
wall
a physical
4 inches
component to
for
enjoying
an
it.
hour. I'll try it. I should be doing physical therapy too. So maybe
Everybody should.
Inroads.
That's my real culture wreck. Is
There you go.
everybody who's
Preventive
listening,
PT.
go to PT. Hang on, public service announcement. Let me say this to your audience. You know that pain that has been lingering, that you believe will go away. It is not going away because you are a person of a certain age. You may be of my vintage. You may have been born in 1980, in which case, surprise, you are in your mid-40s. You are middle-aged. You are breaking down. We were not designed to live as long as we are going to live. You need to take care of yourself. Go on the internet, find your local physical therapy provider, call them and say, here's my problem. When can you see me? Do it now.
You heard it here, everybody. We'll get you some follow-up when we have you on next.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how I'm working on balance with my physical therapy.
Oh, great.
And my shoulder's messed up. And now I'm thinking, what if it's the labrum?
What if it's the labrum?
It might be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, you get your labrum curious.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jack. We're so grateful for your time. We hope your daughter isn't upset if you're a little bit late to pick her up.
She's learned to be patient with me over the years.
and Coach D understands.
Yep.
And we hope to talk to you again, as I'm sure, all of this is going to continue to rapidly unfold. But thanks for helping us get our heads right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Mother of It All. And like my mom always said, how do you know? The Mother of It All is produced by Opus Knox Media with music from It's Electric. If you like this episode, why not send it to a friend right now? Go on, we'll wait. You can follow us on Substack at themotherofitall.substack.com, where subscribing will get you episodes and bonus posts in your inbox and connect you with the Mother of It All listener community. Plus, become a paid subscriber and get a hot off the presses Mother of It All canvas tote. We're also on Instagram at The Mother of It All, and you can email us anytime with ideas or feedback at motherculturepod@gmail.com.